everyone, my name is REDRUP. This is the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I'm joined by Kerrang radio host Alex Baker. We talk all about his old life in bands, how he entered the world of radio, his brand new show that's all about Download Festival, advice for bands who are looking to get their music played on the radio, advice for other people who are looking to work in radio, and loads more. But just before we jump into the chat, I would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds of your time to support me and the podcast. You can hit subscribe or follow wherever you're checking this out, and that way you also don't miss out on any future episodes. You can leave a review or a comment. You can follow the podcast on social media, and there's also a Patreon and a web store if you did want to go one step further. I've shoved links to everything that I've just mentioned in the description of this episode, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now, with all of that out of the way, here's my chat with Alex Baker of Kerrang Radio. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of the It's Not a Phase podcast, where I'm joined by Alex Baker of Kerrang Radio. How's it going, dude?
Woo! Yeah, man, I'm great. Thanks for having me on, dude. Good to see you.
Of course, yeah. I'm glad we kind of got the schedules finally aligned because you're a busy guy.
Oh man, it's been an absolutely nuts start to the year, honestly. Like just nuts. The first part of my year every year is always mad because I end up like basically going on this Hot Wheels Monster Trucks live tour, which is just me running around arenas hosting monster truck shows, which I don't really understand how that's happened, but I'm so glad it has because it's really good fun.
So what does that entail exactly? Because I think I saw some videos. Isn't there like is it like a dinosaur kind of truck thing, like a Truckosaurus kind of thing going on?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like basically, so if anyone like watching or listening now has kids, kids absolutely love Hot Wheels, right? It's one of the biggest selling toys in the world. Hot Wheels and Barbie are like the biggest selling toys, basically.
Yeah.
And years ago, they brought out the Monster Trucks version of these Hot Wheels toys, which are basically like monster trucks, but tiny, right? And what we get is we get kids walking into the arena with their little monster trucks and they look up and they see the full size monster trucks there. So basically what they've done is they've blown all the trucks up to full size, fully working monster trucks. Right. So there's like Mega Rex and Skelosaurus and Tiger Shark, all these like monster trucks. And they're proper monster trucks and they crush real cars and like do wheelies and donuts, and it's just absolutely nuts. So my role in it is to piece the chaos together. So I'm a presenter on presenting the show. So I'm up in the stands with the families and the kids and everyone's watching, and I'm giving out the scores and like calling the action and adding all color commentary and all that sort of stuff. It is absolutely nuts. It's so loud, it's so colorful, it's so ridiculous, and it's really really good fun. And it's in arenas, man. Like,
yeah,
I've done so far this year. I've done the O2, Manchester AO, Liverpool M&S Bank Arena. I've gone to Stuttgart, Turin. I just go in. We're in Copenhagen soon. Herning, like it's just mad. So super good fun. Birmingham's coming up as well in a bit, and in April, and yeah, Glasgow as well. It's just crazy good fun though.
Insane stuff. Yeah,
yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously I guess like your main foray of your career is in obviously the radio and in music. So we go all the way back and kind of develop the origin story, I suppose. Like, do you remember like your first introduction into like, alternative and heavier music? Like what were the gateway bands and albums for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, so my relationship with music goes back as far as I can remember, which is I'm sure the case for everybody you talk to. But weirdly, my life in music, it started out with parental influence, right? Like my parents love Tina Turner, they love Fleetwood Mac. My dad's absolutely obsessed with like people like who's the person that did Big Eyed Beans from Venus? Oh God, I can't remember his name now. My dad will kill me for not being able to remember it. But just mad psychedelic rock music and Jimi Hendrix and all that sort of stuff. So that was always on in the house when I was really, really young and growing up, and going on car journeys, and Fleetwood Mac's Rumours goes in and all the rest of it. But actually, at 6 years old, my parents said to me, "We want you to learn an instrument. What do you want to learn?" And God knows why, right? Because I could have chosen the guitar, could have chosen drums, could have chosen bass, could have chosen any of the cool instruments. The instrument I actually chose, for a reason I still don't understand, was the flute. All right.
The coolest instrument.
The coolest of all the instruments. So I started playing the flute at 6. But like religiously, like lessons every week, did all the grades, got to grade 8 by the time I was 12, which was nuts. And then like joined orchestras. And so the first part of my like world of music was rock, but also then classical music, and
Right.
I got into like London school sort of symphony orchestras and stuff like that, and we toured Italy, like we were actually going and playing shows, and did a night once at the Regent Hall in Regent Street, which I don't even know if that's still there, but we did a program of movie music, you know what I mean? So it was all like big, massive, sprawling movie epics. And it was just amazing. The dude from Hellraiser, that old horror film, was the
Oh yeah.
compere on the night. He introduced it without the pins in his head, unfortunately. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that was kind of the first part. So this kind of weird juxtaposition between classical music and classical training, and then rock. I've got an older brother who's absolutely savage guitar player. So he, rather than choosing the flute, he chose violin, which then translated really nicely onto guitar, right? So he became amazing at guitar, started getting into bands like Radiohead, so all that kind of stuff, all those Nirvana, all those influences were there. And then basically what happened is I went to a gig one night with a girlfriend I was with at the time, and I saw this band play, and they were sick. There was this like London band called Cause for Concern, and I noticed they didn't have a bassist, right? And I'd been sort of like tinkering around with the bass a bit at that point. So I basically went up to them and said, "Guys, why haven't you got a bassist?" And they're like, "Oh, we just don't know any." Right?
That's fair enough.
It wasn't a conscious effort. Like they just
Yeah.
didn't know anyone. I was like, "Well, why don't I play bass for you?" And they were like, "Well, where do you live?" And I told them I live in Finchley in North London, and they're like, "Well, we practice at Mill Hill Music Mart. Why don't you come?" Which was like round the corner. It's like, "Why don't
Right.
you come and do an audition?" And I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I turned up at this place with all these dudes and like just thrashed around on the bass. I think I probably got about 4 notes right. The rest of the time I was just like smashing things up, having a great time, being the 14, 15 year old. And I got in the band, even though I was rubbish, and then started playing with those guys. Now, the mad thing is that the vocalist in that band was a guy called Chris Robson. And Chris Robson is the Chris Robson who now fronts up the band TRC, the hardcore band, and has been involved in heavy music for forever. And me and Chris became really good mates. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I used to, we were in, well, I must have been 17 at this point. So this was a little bit later, but we were in the car and he gave me a mixtape, right? And I was like, "Oh, sick, cheers, dude. Put it in." It was literally a tape because I'm that old. So I
Yeah.
put it in, put it in the thing, and I just got smashed to pieces by all this super heavy music. And it was stuff like Caliban, Nine Bar, Special Move, all these old hardcore bands and early Caliban. And really, it was the riffs of Caliban that kind of drew me in, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is absolutely amazing!" First Caliban album, and then the Vent Caliban album. So first, there was tracks from the first Caliban album on side A, and then side B was just the whole of Vent, which
Right.
he just basically taped for me, and I couldn't believe how good it was. And I was like, "Who are this band, man?" And it completely drew me in. And then I realized that for whatever reason, my sweet spot, the thing that I most love in music is the juxtaposition between incredibly heavy music and incredibly heartfelt, beautiful lyrics. That juxtaposition to me is like my sweet spot for my personal taste. So then that introduced me to Poison the Well, introduced me to the Bled, and then that was it, right? I was just away. And then Killswitch Engage came out with Alive or Just Breathing, which blew my face to pieces. And then I started a new band, and well, I was in a London hardcore band with Chris at the time, then called Tenfold Truth, which I then left when I went to university. Got into university, found a whole new band, and started that straight away. That was a band called State of Serenity. We ended up playing like Hit the Deck Festival and stuff like that. And no, that wasn't State of Serenity. That was Tomorrow Brings Giants. Anyway, so yeah, so that kind of like love affair with music, and then that juxtaposition between the heavy and the beautiful was like just really intoxicating for me. So that's it really. And during that time, there was also some weird forays. Like I was a garage MC at one point because a mate of
Okay.
mine was a garage DJ and he wanted me to be like the hype man. So I went along to one of his parties and was just like on the mic like, "Oh my gosh, oh my giddy giddy gosh," yeah. And I was sort of doing all this like London MC stuff. I was also really into hip hop, so yeah, just provocative, interesting music has always like been my tonic, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you mentioned there obviously you've been in band yourself,
Yeah.
and you've done a few cool things for that. Releasing music and playing. Hit the deck. What were those band years like for you? Like,
Oh
do you look
man.
back on them fondly, or
Yes, so fondly. Like I
yeah,
loved being in bands, and like the only thing really, like it's not really a regret, but the sort of only longing I have in my life is that I want to make music again, you know, and I
right,
struggle with that all the time. Like it's in me all the time, like to write. I've got a piano. I'm fortunate to have a piano in my house, so I'll sit down and like play piano all the time and just write kind of pretty songs, right? So it's not metal, but I would love to write a absolutely savage metal album. I've got this whole idea of this whole concept of a record that I want to do. Um, but I just need to find the right musicians and get it together because it's like incredibly ambitious. It's all about like the start of the universe.
wow,
But
okay,
with all the classical influence in there as well. And I want to
yeah,
record it with like a symphony orchestra and make it absolutely insane.
yeah,
But it's who I just haven't got the time, you know. But those days of being in bands were really really good fun. And actually one of the sort of core parts of it, which was also I guess the first foray into the music industry professionally, was I used to gig rep at the Barfly in Birmingham. So when I lived in Birmingham, I went to uni there and then stayed because Kerrang Radio was there, and I was trying to get my foot in the door at Kerrang back all those years ago. My God, such a long time ago. Um, but I was a gig rep at the Barfly, and that was great because it was like sorting out people's riders and like checking the guest list off, and getting people to pay any walk ups that were coming through. So it was just like running the gig night. What that meant was that I knew everybody at the Barfly really well, and the Barfly was the absolute perfect venue. I don't know what it's called now. It's underneath the Institute in Birmingham in Digbeth. It was a perfect sweet spot because it was like a 600 capacity venue. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
bands that were sick but weren't big enough to play the bigger venues played at the Barfly. And what I noticed really, really quickly is that lots of the gigs we were putting on weren't full, right? And I was in a metalcore band in Birmingham, and I knew a lot of people in Birmingham. And I remember saying to the general manager at the Barfly at the time, I was like, "Look, let's try something." She was like, "Go on." I was like, "I'm fairly convinced I can really help sell the gigs that you're bringing into this place. Put my band on, right, and we'll hit the streets and sell tickets." And she was like, "All right, let's give it a go." And we tried it first time with, I can't remember who it was, but we tried it first time with a band, and we basically sold the place out from literally just me and my band going around like Pigeon Park and these places in Birmingham where all the alternative people are, and
Yeah.
going, "Look, oh, this great band's coming through." And stay that was Tomorrow Brings Giants. Tomorrow Brings Giants are going to play, or was it State of Serenity? I can't. It might have been State of Serenity.
Some overlap there.
Yeah, the State of Serenity
Yeah.
and Tomorrow Brings, they were kind of very similar part, but I can't remember which way around it was. I think it was State of Serenity. In fact, it definitely was. Definitely State of Serenity. We were like a poor man's Kill Switch, basically. We broke up because I was like, we're just not as good as Kill Switch and Ghost, so what's the fucking point? But
Well, you were the last Serenity then, weren't you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was the last one. But but yeah, like we just went around town and sold these tickets and just packed this place out, and the manager couldn't believe it. She was like, "I've never seen it so busy." So I was like, "Well, let's do it again." She was like, she basically said, "Any band that I'm putting on that you want to support, let me know." I was like, "Sick." So and then she started booking the most killer bands. So we had like Cry for Silence come through, we had Bring Me the Horizon come through, we had Architects come through, Caliban, the band that got me into that sort of scene in the first place, and
Yeah.
I never forget that. We supported those guys. I was like, what the hell? In fact, Architects, we supported Architects at the Barfly. That was the first show that Sam ever did with the band
What was
as
it?
their new
Okay.
vocalist. I remember him being backstage, just like freaking out because he was about to go on stage. And yeah, it was the first show he ever did with Architects. Was at that. We were supporting that night. Bring Me the Horizon there. There was a whole period of time where Ollie would refer to that gig at the Barfly as one of the best gigs they'd ever done. And it was yeah, again, we were there as support, like having hit the streets and selling tickets and getting people along. And do you know what? It's interesting, like reflectively thinking at the time, it was just about my band, right? Well, I'm gonna get my band to play some great shows. But
Yeah.
actually, I was reflecting on it like years later. And actually, one of the things that I really loved about that period was that I was actually helping people discover those headliners. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even about my band because my band sucked compared to those, you know. But it was just amazing to sort of the amount of people that we sort of dragged into that venue that might not have gone, right? And sort of helped create this buzz and this scene in Birmingham, which was really vibrant. So those days were amazing. Being part of that scene in that way was such a buzz. And then what happened is I was in Tomorrow Brings Giants by this point. Stage Rent had collapsed for lots of reasons, including my guitarist getting off with my girlfriend at the time,
Oh
which
no.
wasn't ideal. And I
No.
kind of struggled to see eye to eye after that. But then we yeah moved into Tomorrow Brings Giants, which was just amazing, and that featured members of a Birmingham hardcore band called Random Conflict who were doing really well at the time as well. So we sort of came together and started Tomorrow Brings Giants, which was like a much better version of both of those bands, Random Conflict and Status Rene. And that's what we ended up playing, Hit the Deck, and doing tour. Like, did a European tour and loads of great shows. And yeah, that was just that was an absolute buzz. But around that time was when I got my foot in the door at Kerrang. So I started like, and I can tell you the whole story if you like of how I got into it, but
Go
it's
for it.
quite
Yeah.
long. So, but before I tell you it, basically what happened is I got this gig at Kerrang eventually, and I started playing new music and new bands on air. And it was at that point that I realized that really my passion, and I hadn't really fully realized this until that point, my passion was really about helping other bands rather than my own. I
Right.
was much more passionate about helping other bands succeed. Because that in that way, I didn't have to write the music and I didn't have to like do all the touring and everything else. I could just like champion other people and let them have the success. And
Yeah.
it was such a thrill and such a buzz, and kind of realized that that was like a calling, if you know what I mean. So I stuck with it.
It's
But
kind of like your own like street team that you've decided to create for yourself for all these several other bands. I don't know if you remember like street teams back in the
yeah,
day.
oh well, I mean, I remember street teams acutely because actually it
Yeah.
was a street team that first got me into Kerrang Radio. So
Okay.
at the time, I was being in a band, right? That's what I was doing, like full time. I was just working a sort of part-time job to pay the bills, and I was just being in a band and doing as many shows and touring as much as I could, which was great, but ultimately like not that fruitful. Um, and then during that time, Kerrang Radio opened in Birmingham, and I was like, oh my God, as if Kerrang is here, like what, like round the corner. So I basically went and knocked on the door, and they let me in, and I spoke to the receptionist and said, "Oh, I'm yeah, kind of want to work here." And she was like, "Yeah, you and half of Birmingham, love," type thing, you know. And I was like, "Yeah, fair." So she's like, "Look, you know, we're posting up jobs every now and then. Like, we'll give you, you know, just keep an eye out." So I did keep an eye out, and two jobs came up. One of them was to join the Kerrang Radio Roadies, which was their street team, basically,
Right.
and the other was for head of news. So I so I applied for both these jobs with like covering letters and everything. And the head of news job, I was like, look, I haven't got any experience as a journalist. I don't actually really know anything about news. What I do know is that I'll be the best head of news you've ever had, you know, knowing that they hadn't had one.
Yeah.
And so that clearly must have given them a laugh or whatever, because they messaged me and or emailed me and they were like, "Oh, we're not going to put you forward for the head of news job because you've got absolutely no qualifications
I mean,
whatsoever."
that's
But
fair.
yeah, totally fair. But
Yeah.
we loved your covering letter. So why don't you come in for a street team, a Kerrang Radio Roadies interview? And I was like, yeah, great. So I went along, and there was like 40 people there being interviewed for these positions, and got on. Long story short, got on the street team. Now the mad thing about the street team was that it was big, right? There was about 25 people in it. Um, what was crazy to me was that I'd say probably about three of those 25 people actually cared about working for the brand and actually
Okay.
cared about working in radio. Everybody else was just there to like go to gigs and like meet bands. Like, they didn't actually care about having a career in that space.
Yeah.
And I noticed this really quickly because I was like signing myself up for every single shift they put out. Some of the shifts sucked, right? It was like go to a bar and give out chlamydia tests in the toilets because we'd done some sort of local deal with the
Right.
NHS or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
some
Okay.
commercial stations, we'd done like a local deal.
Right.
Some of them were like hand out Kerrang Radio car stickers at busy junctions at 5 a.m. in the morning, and like just crap stuff. And I just signed up for everything because I was like, I don't care what I'm doing. I just need to be involved with this brand. But almost no one else did. So I spoke to the marketing guy who used to run the street team. And I was like, mate, why is it no one else signs up for these shifts? Like, do they not care? And he was like, no, they just don't think they do. It was like, I just think they want to go to gigs and meet bands. And I was like, all right. I was like, well, rather than me having to sign up every time, can you just make me to just put me on every shift? Just assume I'll do every shift. And he
Yeah.
was like, yeah, great, all right. So suddenly I went from having, sporadic work, like three things a week or two things a week, to basically having something to do every day. Because no longer was he trying to make it fair and give people different things. He just put me on everything. And after a little while, I was like, well, why don't I just run the street team for you, like rather than you having to do it? And it was like, oh man, amazing, one less thing off my plate. Do you know what I mean? So I started running the street team and distributing the shifts and all the rest of it. And just all these little micro things to sort of edge me in, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then I'm someone who really believes in like focus, right? I really believe in having focus goals and like vision boards and like manifestation. I'm all about all of that. Everything I've achieved in my life has been about through those processes. And I had this like vision. There's two things I wanted. I wanted a fob, like a to get in the building, because it was like an electronic key to get in the building.
Yeah.
So I thought if I've got a fob, I can come and go as I please. Right? I'll have access to the building whenever I want. Because at the time I had to like buzz and like the receptionist would have to let me in, so it could only be there during hours, and do you know what I mean? All that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So if I've got a fob, I can come and go as I please. So that was the first thing. Second thing is I need a Kerrang radio email address, right? And they're never going to give a Kerrang radio email address to just anyone, right?
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to get those things. So that's when the car sticker thing came up. Um, I remember saying to the marketing guy, I was like, well, if I'm going to be picking up, because we had a Kerrang radio car called the Warrior, right? It's like if I'm going to pick up the Warrior and drive it to some busy, road somewhere to hand out car stickers, how am I going to get in the morning? I need to be able to get into the building. I was like, oh, I'll just give you a fob, and I was like,
There you go.
so that was it. I had a fob. I had access to the building, and then about 2, 3 months later, um, one of the producers was doing a breakfast show promotion or whatever, and they had a list of like 50 winners that had won this competition that they needed to contact. And he was like, oh man, it's such a big job contacting all these winners. And I was like, I'll do it. And he was like, oh really? And I was like, yeah, 100%. But I am going to have an email address though, because I can't contact them from my own personal email address. That'd be really weird. And he was like, oh yeah, no, good point. Okay, let's get you one set up. So I got my own Alex Baker Kerrang radio email address. And I was like, oh my God. So suddenly I had like an official email address and I had access to the building. And what that meant was that it just meant I could just start building responsibilities for myself. And I was like part of email groups so I could see what was going on in the business.
Yeah.
It meant I could like, always with permission, it meant I could go into the studios at weekends and like record demos and do you know what I mean? Just had access to the facilities. And that was kind of it. And then what happened next was, with again the benefit of hindsight and reflecting on it, actually quite a clever move on my part, if I must say so myself. But didn't feel like a clever move at the time. It just felt like the obvious thing to do. Is by this point, people kind of knew me and recognized me from being in the office and doing these things and being helpful. But what I did is I went round to every person in the building and I said, look, everybody wants to work here, man. It's Kerrang Radio. At the time, we sold cigarettes and beer in the vending machine. It was not. It was so fun, right? And so I went round to everyone in the building. And was like, "This is such a cool place to work. There must be something though about your job that you hate. There must be something that you have to do that sucks." So I'd already inherited the street team organization. So Loz, who's still at Kerrang and Planet Rock now, Loz Guest, he was a producer at the time. He wasn't head of music. He was a producer at the time. He was like, "Oh, I love doing recording all the specialist shows, but I hate having to do the edit, like to edit it down and get the sound right. It's just so laborious and takes so much time." And I was like, "Show me how to do it. You'll never have to do it again." And he was like, oh, okay. So he showed me how to do it. I learned how to do it. And then he never had to do it again. So he'd go in the studio and record all these shows with like Stuart Cable from Stereophonics, God rest his soul, and Corey Taylor or Christian and Tim or whoever it was at the time that was doing shows. And then I'd go and edit it down and make it sound amazing and put beds in it. And, and that was kind of really a producer job, right? I didn't know that at the time, but that's kind of what it
Yeah.
was. Someone else didn't have the capacity to make all the station production that needed to be made, so showed me how to do that, and I kind of learned how to use Pro Tools like on the fly and started building all this stuff. Then over in the sales team, there's a thing called records of transmission in commercial radio, where if we do a commercial campaign, you need to be able to showcase that audio back to the client, right? So you've got to pull that audio off our logging system so that you can send it to them as an MP3 or whatever.
Right.
Again, really kind of boring admin thing that no one wants to do. I was like, I'll do it. So I sort of learned how to do that. So basically what I did is I sort of amassed this steaming pile of shit that nobody else wanted to do or like had to do, but kind of took those sort of boring responsibilities off people's hands. And what it did was two things. One, it gave me an understanding of every part of the business. And two, it made everyone love me because I was doing the crap that they didn't want to do. And then what happened next is a new boss came in and was like, oh, he changed the whole schedule and was like, oh, we need a producer for this evening show that we want to do. Like, who's good? Who do we like? And everyone was like, got to hire Alex. So that's when I got my first contract at Kerrang and started producing like officially. Um, but all the while, the other thing that I did was I started talking to Loz more. And Loz, as I said, was the producer of many of the specialist shows, but he was also the presenter of what was called the Unsigned Show at the time. And the Unsigned Show was where I wanted to be, right? That was kind of the goal.
Yeah.
Play new music on air. That's kind of it. Um, and I basically said to Loz, like, look, I'm in bands, right? A lot of the bands that you're playing on the show, I know, right? Because I'm playing with them and I know them and we tour together and stuff like that. I was like, look, why? I'm not trying to get in your way. I don't want to I'm not trying to step on your toes. But if you want, I'll write you a whole bunch of prep that you can just use to help record the show each week or do the show. And he was like, oh man, yeah, that'd be great. So I used to like write a little paragraph of like, this band and what they're up to and what they're like and blah, blah, blah. And he kind of used that prep to do the show. And after about a month, it wasn't long, he was like, dude, why don't you just come on air and do this with me, like as a co-host? And I was
Right.
like,
Okay.
yeah, sick, let's do that. So I went on air and just started doing that. And this was before I got my contract, right? So this is prior to this. I started doing that. And after about 3 or 4 months of that, he was like, Alex, I've got so many other things to do. Right, he's head of specialists. We had all this other stuff to do. Um, you're much more passionate about this new music like shtick than I am. He was just being honest. Um, why don't you just do the show? And I was like, in bits, like crying my eyes out. I can't believe I've got my own show on Kerrang, blah blah blah. And that was in like 2007. Right,
Wow.
so it's a long
So
time
we're,
ago.
we're we're going up quite close to 20 years now.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly that. So, and that show has always been my baby ever since. It's been like an absolute labor of love. I've never missed a show, even if I've taken holiday or whatever. I've always recorded it, in advance. I remember recording the show when I was in Thailand on my honeymoon. I did the show when my wife was in labor from the hospital car park.
Committed. That's
I've literally
commitment.
never
Yeah.
missed. I've like made a promise to myself that I'd never miss a show, and I
Yeah.
never have. Um, and it's been wild, man. Like, if when I look at like festival bills and front covers of magazines and all that now, like they're all bands that started out on that show like all those years ago. And it's like it's just the best. It's just such an awesome thing to have been part of and being able to play a part. And it's a small part, right? I'm not trying to claim anyone's success, but being able to play a part in the journey of these bands is just it's the ultimate. It's yeah, that's why I've always done it. And there's been times as well where it's kind of got in the way of like potential other stuff, but I don't care. It's just like it's my baby, so that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was that first show like when you were just doing it on your own? Like, were you bricking it a little bit?
Do you know, I actually wasn't. I was just
No?
like, the whole thing was just really, it felt right from the start. It was like bands I knew, total autonomy on what I had to play. That's the thing that people don't realize about that show as well. It's like, there's nobody else, right? There's no like producer, there's no sort of factory behind the scenes. I'll literally get someone send something to me on Instagram and I'll put it on it. The first time I played Enter Shikari, I streamed them off their MySpace page. Right, they had nothing out, so I went on their MySpace page. This is how long ago it was, and they had a demo version of OK Time for Plan B up. And I was
Right.
like, right, listen to this. I opened it on the PC fader in the desk and just played it. And it sounded crap and it was all squelchy because it was
Yeah.
streaming. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, all of that, and very early Bring Me and very early Architects, and Don Broco sent me a Tesco CDR with a letter written on like note, like a little notepad that you with like that kind of what's it called, like wire binding that you
Yeah,
rip
yeah.
out the page. They sent me like a letter on that saying, "Hello, we're Don Broco," and I still got it in the house. Um, yeah, so mad to play such a part in all those journeys, but
Crazy.
truly great, and I still do the show now. Still never missed a show.
And how do you feel about it now? Like saying, like approaching 20 years later, like what's your feeling on it now?
I feel old, honestly, but there's also a part of me that feels like committing to new music in that way sort of keeps you young a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's actually like loads of research and stuff that says when you get to about, I think it's like 32, there's like a magic number that basically when you hit that age, most people basically stop caring about anything new, not just music, like anything. They
Yeah.
start reverting back to what made them happy when they were young. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like I totally get that, and nostalgia is a big part of my life as well, and is a big part of my life, and I too revisit all those things that made me happy as a kid. But because I've also got that commitment to new music, I'm always challenging myself to find something exciting and different. And, also, the blessing of the amount of time shows how cyclical music is, and the same things have come and gone over over 2 decades. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when Paramore were big, suddenly every band was female fronted,
Yeah.
and then metalcore was big, and suddenly every band that came into my inbox was a metalcore band, and then pop punk, and every band, you know what I mean? It's really interesting how you see the trends follow through, and then you see which bands rise through that and which don't.
Yeah. And it's not only
Um,
that, you have like when new metal first came out, obviously it was huge, but there was like so many people that hated new metal.
yeah,
And now you see like this resurgence and they look back at it like, oh, that was the best period of music in my life. It's like, well, where
yeah.
where where was all this love back then? Like,
Yeah, I know. Well, it's going to be an amazing moment in it. Corn playing Download this year because
yeah.
they're going to be they're such icons now, you know, and they've never headlined Download before, not in the UK, and that's going to be just such an amazing moment to see that. And I think it's just going to blow people's minds. So that's going to be fun for sure, and
Definitely.
reliving those nostalgic days. If they play Freak on a Leash, every single person in that field is going to be like, "Go!"
And doing the
Yeah, it's gonna be you're not gonna be able to hear the stage because people doing the Jonathan Davis.
yeah.
It's gonna be quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, mad. So there is that kind of element of it, of keeping me fresh, fresh blood. And I have been quite protective of it over the years. There have been people over the years that have offered to help out, and I've just been like, nope, not interested. There's only one person I've ever let help, and that's a lady called Laura, who came in as work experience like years and years and years ago at Kerrang, and she was always such a fan of Fresh Blood, and just always had the purest intentions. She's like a new music super fan as well. And about 3 years ago, she offered help with the show, and I was like, "Yep, all right." And she was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yep." So she helped out for a bit, um, but then just got busy doing other stuff and couldn't help out. I mean, it takes such a lot of work, that show. It's
Yeah.
mad. The amount of stuff you have to listen to, and it's wild, but it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on top of that, just because of like we also mentioned download a moment ago, you've got another show, the download radio show.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Like, what's all that about? Like, what can people expect from that show?
Yeah, I mean, that came out of an understanding and a kind of love, a kind of an understanding of the fact that the download community sort of transcends the festival itself, right? Like, yes, download itself is the meeting point for the sort of humans of download every year, but the conversations and the excitement and the love for download extends way beyond that. You know, there's people that have download tattoos and people that got
Yeah.
married at download and had babies at download and all sorts of stuff. And I just think, you know, basically what happened is our boss at Kerrang, Rick, who's such a dude. I mean, he's such a punk, Rick. Like you can ask for like a more metal and punk person to run our station. He had a conversation with Live Nation. We're like, look, let's do this. Let's create a show. And then he asked me if I wanted to present it, and I was like, hell yes, I do. So basically, every week it's 2 hours of every single band we play are bands that have played at the festival before or are
Right.
playing this year. So it's a celebration of like the best of the best music. And then we have like guests on. So I'm interviewing all the bands that are playing and you know, week on week. And we get, you know, a big part of the show as well is about getting, you know, fans of Download on the air. Like I don't want it to be me chatting all the time. Like, you know, I do love to chat, but you know, I want people on telling their own stories, and we're getting people to send voice notes and stuff and playing those out on air. So just kind of a real kind of base really for anyone that loves the festival, just to indulge it and have fun with it, and any announcements and Easter eggs that might come out and stuff like that I can talk about on the show. So Saturday nights 5 till 7 to download, check it out.
Tune in. Yeah.
Yeah, great, it's great
Yeah.
fun.
What's your thoughts on this year's lineup? Like, are there any highlights for you on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of highlights. I mean, I couldn't believe it actually when Green Day were announced. I was like,
Yeah, 'cause they've
they've
never done it
never
before, have they?
they've
Yeah.
never played down. How is that even possible? Like the
Yeah.
stars have
Like,
just never
yeah.
aligned. Wild. So that's going to be an amazing nostalgia hit. But also what's good about them is that they're just so good live, right? They're just bangers for days, and I think it's going to matter to them a lot that they're playing that festival. So I think they're going to bring the thunder, and it's just going to be really, really good fun and lots of sing along anthems. Talking about headliners, we've talked about Corn. You know, that's just going to be a nostalgia fest, and I think just one of those moments that you were there at Download 2025 watching Corn. It's just everyone's going to remember that moment. Um, I also love the fact that they've programmed some fun stuff. The fact that Steel Panther are headlining on the Sunday on the second stage. That's just going to be fun. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I've noticed this with Download over the past, certainly over the past 5 years. They're starting to inject a lot more fun into it. It's not so serious as it used to be, right? It's still got serious bands and it's programmed in a serious way, you know, to make sure that the right bands are there and for the right reasons. But there's with District X and the rise of the whole village area and booking bands like Steel Panther to play, I just think there's like an element of like beery fun to it, which I just think is great and also different from other festivals. But then you can't really talk about Download 2025 without talking about Sleep Token. And
Yeah.
I I'm quite well known, I think, for being a Sleep Token mega fan. And I didn't realize this, but someone messaged me on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck we call it these days, the hellhole. Um, when I announced that I was doing the download, this person messaged me and was like, "Oh God, wall to wall Sleep Token is what we're expecting." Then it was like me and my mates have got a drinking game when we're listening to Kerrang! How many times you're going to make mention Sleep Token? And I thought I didn't realize that I was that obsessed. But I think they're one of the most exciting bands to have come out of UK music scene in over a decade. I think they're one of those like Bring Me. I think they're one of those bands that bring people into our world, you know, and unfortunately, that's always going to piss the gatekeepers off, right? It's always going to
100%.
be people that hate that. But I am the opposite of that. I think our scene is stronger and more vibrant and better the more people are involved in it. And it pisses me off that in the UK, rock and metal and alternative sounds are like deemed as other. Like, you know,
Yeah.
because if you go to other countries, they're not. In Australia, rock music is A-list daytime radio on pop stations. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go to the States, you ask any rapper or anyone from music in the States about rock and metal, they fucking love it. Like it's part of the culture. But for some reason that I still don't understand, here in the UK, since the early noughties, basically, it's been just othered, you know?
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
it really annoys me that almost the the mainstream media almost kind of goes out of its way to disrespect and disregard rock and alternative. And it just winds me up because the audience is there, right? Shit tons of people like it. Download, people don't know this. Download is the second biggest single site festival in the country after Glastonbury. It
Yeah.
literally goes Glastonbury, download. Like not Reading and Leeds, not all download, right? And Glastonbury is all fucking rock anyway. Well, it used to be. So the idea that rock music is this like undercurrent, underground, secondary thing. It's just bullshit, and it pisses me off all the time that the mainstream media aren't more respectful of it. Anyway, how did I get onto that? Oh, we're talking about Sleep Token. Yeah, so when bands like Sleep Token come about that genuinely attract new audiences into our world, I am all for it, and it's hilarious watching the gatekeepers get as pissed off as they do because it's all as so much bluster is these days, polarized opinions. So much of it is just based on absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Oh, they haven't earned their stripes. Oh, they're not big enough, mate. Sleep Token sold over 100,000 tickets in the UK on their UK tour, right? 100,000. That's more than the entire capacity of Download. So you
Yeah.
can't tell me that, and that's without everything else that Download offers, right? You can't tell me that Sleep Token aren't big enough to play as a headline Download. They are. Plus, they're fucking amazing. Plus, the music is so interesting and diverse and unusual and genius. Plus, they're amazing live. I mean, what Sleep Token on the main stage in the dark at Download is going to be fucking
Yeah.
incredible.
And
And anyone that
what's
thinks,
the criteria of like they haven't earned their stripes? Like how they'd have to be going for like 20 years before they're like
yeah, what
deemed
does that
worthy? Like,
even mean? And again, like what bullshit? Like why are we trying to why are we trying to repress people's journeys? Like if there's
yeah,
almost this like back of mind cynicism in the UK that if someone you hear it, don't know, oh, they just got so successful so quickly. Like that's bad.
yeah,
Like, why is that bad? If you're super talented and you have something really interesting to offer, and people go, "Fuck, this is great," and you become successful,
yeah,
that's like a good thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
If you're flash in the pan and you're like a one-hit wonder, I get it. But they've had like fuck loads of albums out, all of
yeah,
which have been complete class. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, it winds me up when people say shit like that about Sleep Token. But yeah, then across the rest of it, there's loads of bands again with my fresh blood hat on. Loads of bands like Lolo, Bex, Dead Pony, Unpeople, Split Chain, Harpy, Vower. Like the list goes on and on and on of bands that like I've been supporting loads on the show. And then also bands further up the bills, like it's going to be amazing to see Boston Manor so high up the bill. Don Broco, all the
yeah,
way up there on the Saturday. I mean, I want Broco to headline one day. I just think that band are just the absolute tits. I think they're so good. And yeah, that they've got to be festival headliners one day in the not too distant future, I hope. And then like the likes of Poppy and Loathe and Static Dress, all these bands that I love and have supported loads on the show. So it's going to be it's always like nice for me to just go and watch these bands like absolutely kill it. So I
yeah.
think the lineup's amazing, and I love the fact that Sleep Token's on there. And I don't really get it. What do you think? Why do you think the gate? Why do gatekeepers exist? What are they trying to protect? What's it about?
I honestly don't know. Like it's just I couldn't even tell you. Like I don't understand what the mentality is. Like surely you want the scene to like thrive. You want like new people. You want like new blood. Like you can't have the same headliners playing over and over and over again.
They're
Like one, it's
literally going
boring,
to die.
and two, that like they progressively breaking up or dying. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah. I just find it really weird. I think I get it. I get it, right? I get that the alternative world, our community, is a beautiful place. I get that, right? And I, you know, one of the things that attracted me to rock music in the first place was the community. Like I said, I was going to garage raves and like hip hop nights and stuff like that. And it was always a bit edgy and a bit like, oh fuck, I don't know if I'm going to be all right here. People would turn up with baseball bats and shit like that. And I remember going to the Dome in Tufnell Park to like their Looney Tunes night, which was basically like a hardcore metal night when I was probably about 15. Like I was far too young to be there. And I remember at the time like being like, oh, everyone's so nice, and everyone looked fucking terrifying to a 15-year-old,
Yeah.
but everyone was so nice. And I remember going to Camden for the first time and being like these are my people. Like everyone's really friendly and lovely, and they're not at all intimidating in the way that you think they are just based on looks alone. Do you know what I mean? And so I get it. I get that people who care about the community side of our world want to keep it safe. I get that. But the idea that Sleep Token are gonna generate an audience of people that are going to infiltrate our world who are not going to be nice. It's just ridiculous. It's what are you
Yeah.
basing that on? What is that? What's the underlying psychological problem? I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it. So,
No.
but I'd love to do a podcast or an interview with just like a bunch of gatekeepers and just like have the conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it on yours and I'll come on and we'll do it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Just explain.
Yeah,
Explain.
gatekeeping, go.
Yeah. That could be the name, Gatekeeper
Yeah.
Go.
And that it'll either be some purist bullshit or it'll be something really base like racism or sexism, or it will be just something that we're supposed to be over by now. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It
Yeah.
won't be anything meaningful. I'm
No.
sure it won't.
No. It'll be people with two brain cells fighting for third place trying to explain it. So,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly that. Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
Sleep Token are gonna absolutely rule. And I think what's gonna happen is lots of people are gonna watch it and be like, oh, oh, right, okay. Yeah,
Well, it
maybe.
happens every time. They did it with Slipknot when they first headlined, like, oh, they're not going to do it, and they proved them wrong. And then they did it with like Avenged Sevenfold as well, and then yeah, they proved
Exactly.
them wrong again. So I don't understand.
And bring me to
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
loads of people were pissed off that Bring Me the Horizon were headlining. It's like, how can you be pissed off with that? They're
yeah,
like the most trailblazing, exciting band to come out of our scene for decades. And like, why would you be annoyed about that?
I'll,
Mad.
I'll, I'll tell you, it's because they didn't earn their stripes. Clearly.
Yeah, yeah. Apart from the fact they released all these albums and like introduced the scene to the UK and
Yeah,
just wild,
yeah,
wild, truly.
idiots, idiots.
Yeah,
Well, with the world kind of going like further into like an ever digital age, there's more streaming and all that kind of stuff. Being in the world of radio, what are your thoughts on radio's place and importance in 2025 when streaming's like
yeah.
soaring?
It's really interesting because I think of radio as audio, right? And we're in the audio market, if you want to use business terms. And radio has a role to play in the tapestry of the audio market, as does streaming, as do podcasts, as do any other forms that sort of exist. And I find it really interesting that people don't sort of instinctively understand that, I guess. And a really good example was a guy came up to me at a party years ago, and I mean, he was so loathsome. This guy came up to me with a glass of prosecco and went, "Oh, you're Alex Baker, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, hello mate, nice to meet you." And he was like, "How do you feel knowing that you're going to be out of a job in 5 years because we're going to take over?" He was from Spotify, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." He was like, "Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Dying industry, isn't it, radio?" And I went, "Well, actually, radio's growing year on year." And the other thing is that I'm a filter. So I think of myself, just to talk about fresh blood again, as I always do. I think of myself as a filter, right? And with the sort of proliferation of digital, filters have never been more important,
Yeah,
right? The digital world without filters is a disaster. Google's a filter. There's filters in every single site that you exist. Algorithms are filters. There's filters everywhere, in lesser or greater, states of efficiency and you know goodness. And my whole thing is I'm just a filter. Fresh blood on Kerrang and Kerrang radio and all radio stations are just filters, and they're filtered basically by brand, right? So if you apply the filter of Kerrang radio by turning on Kerrang radio, you're going to get stuff that is Heartland Kerrang radio. That's what you're going to get. If you apply the filter of Kiss, you're going to get Kiss. If you apply the filter of Hits radio, you'll get Hits radio. These brands are built around the communities they serve, the audiences they serve, the demographics they serve, the music they want to hear, the life stages they're at. All these, they all filter, 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 and you end
Yeah.
up with a product that is just brilliant to listen to. So I sort of said that to him, and he was like, "Oh," kind of walked off. So I mean, my role in Fresh Blood is a filter. Like I like doing it, and I'm passionate about it. But really, people when they listen to the show, they're not listening to me. They're listening to the musical selections. And the beautiful thing about that is that someone's done the work for them, you know,
Yeah, you've
and
like curated the
it's
the playlist.
curation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also human curation. And I'm not a technophile, right? I'm not or a technophobe, should I say? I'm not afraid of technology, but what I am kind of conscious of is that I still believe, and this might change in years to come, but at the moment, I still wholeheartedly believe in the importance of the human touch, right? And I would much rather listen to a curated playlist from someone that I respect through a brand that I respect than just something that's served to me on one of the streaming platforms. And the reason I feel that way is because they get it wrong so often, and I end up listening to stuff that I don't really like and think, what is this crap? So that filtering is kind of a really important element of it. The other thing about radio, and I've sort of already said it there, is the ease. We live in a time where um, we're so there's so much expectation on us to make decisions all the time, right? And decision fatigue is a real thing, like from a psychological perspective. Anyone that's like had to spend the whole day at work and they've had to make multiple decisions, you come back and the last thing you want is to figure out what you're going to eat for dinner. You just got no decisions left in you. If you've ever
Yeah.
done a house renovation, right? Fuck me. When you're having to decide what light switches you have to have and what plug sockets you have to have and what color your light bulbs are going to be, by the end of it, you're like, I just don't fucking care. I don't care. I don't want to live here anymore. This is bullshit. Give me an Airbnb now so I can get away
Yeah.
from it. So decision fatigue is a real thing, and radio is like the antidote to that, right? Because again, you can put on a brand that you know that you love, and we'll just do the job for you. We'll play the music you want to hear. We'll the best radio stations will stretch that. They'll challenge you and they'll take you down a different direction, and they'll curate things in a way that's a really interesting listening experience. Or if the station is just supposed to be to comfort you, then you'll just get that. You'll get the comfort. You'll get the tunes you know and love, and we won't challenge you. So it has a really important role to play to fulfill that kind of human need, if you like. And the other thing about it as well is that it's trusted, and I think like again, so decision fatigue's a real thing. The other thing that's a real thing is just not knowing what the fuck to trust anymore.
Yeah.
I personally am on a bit of a personal mission, and I'm sort of dragging the whole business that I work for on this mission as well. Well, not really dragging it; they're up for it, but sort of initiated it to try and redress the balance a little bit when it comes to people's what I'm terming their sort of tech life balance. I think we, as human beings, have become overly connected, and I really don't think that's good. I think the amount of time we're spending on socials, the amount of time we're spending on screens, and we're forgetting that the real world is where real connection happens and where humans are supposed to be. We're not supposed to be in this massive, massive, hyper connected community at all times. We're just not. That's not how we're wired. It's not how we've evolved. It's no wonder people are feeling anxious and fucked, because it's completely overwhelming. And again, radio is kind of like while there's all that chaos and all that anxiety driving and all that misinformation and not knowing what to trust and everyone having an opinion but there being almost no experts, and in fact the sort of the demise of experts, people saying, oh, we're sick of the experts. Who was it that said that? Boris Johnson, I think it might have been. We're sick
Probably.
of the experts. You just think, what the fuck, we're sick of the experts? No, we're not. That's ridiculous. But again, radio by contrast, super trusted, super safe, super regulated, super curated. you know we can't lie on radio. If we spread misinformation in histories, we'll get literally fined. And if we
Yeah.
keep doing it, you get shut down. The idea that we can go on air and say whatever we want, it's just we can't. Um, can't incite violence. We can't celebrate violence. There's all sorts of things that we can't do on radio, and fucking damn right, we shouldn't be doing that stuff. So I think that combination of like giving the people what they want, making it easy for them, providing that companionship, providing that curation, and doing so in like a really trusted, safe environment. I think that is one of the, many of the reasons why radio is so resilient. And I also think that it's important to recognize that radio is bigger today than it's ever been. So more people listening to radio today than they ever have. So it's actually on the ascendancy. I think people
Right.
assume because it's a traditional media, I think they assume like TV, it's dipping, but it's actually not. It's growing all the time. And the growth of radio of audio, the audio industry generally with podcasting, everything is strengthening radio rather than damaging it. So it's a super cool time. The other thing that's weird about radio, and I sometimes bang on about this with my mates, and they tell me to shut up, is that it's kind of a victim of its own success in a way because it's been here forever. Like you and I, and nobody watching or listening right now remembers a time before radio, right?
Yeah.
Because it's over 100 years old. So I think because it's always been there and we're obsessed as human beings with novelty, it's really easy for it to just sort of disappear into the background and be like, oh, radio is an old sort of fuddy-duddy thing. But the reality is, I can go into a studio. If I went to the studio now, I can open a microphone and I can invisibly beam my voice into people's brains at scale, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of people hearing my voice. And I can choose songs that will have a physiological impact on the people listening. I can change their heartbeat, their BPM, by the choice of song that I play. You know what I mean? I can like take them back to a period of time where they were super happy and childlike. It's fucking mind control on a grand scale. And I think if it came out today, if it was like a new thing, like it never existed before, that concept wasn't even a thing, and then suddenly it existed, and it had like a charismatic leader at the helm, like Elon Musk or whatever, it would
Yeah.
be they'd be the most invested in, exciting thing ever, and people would be clamoring to spend money on it. People would be clamoring to like shut it down. There'd be all these people going, "Oh, it's too invasive. Its voices in my head." Ah, it would be like front page news for years. But
Yeah.
because it's always been there, people don't think of it like that. So yeah, as you can tell, I quite like radio.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd imagine so for doing it for so long. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I just like conversation, right? And I was just having this conversation with someone the other day, again, just to sort of bash on social media for a bit. Like we I remember a time where you go to the pub with your mates, right? And you sit down and I mean I don't this doesn't happen so much now because people are sort of more worldly wise. But when you were younger and people were still forming their ideas and their ideologies, and you'd be at the pub with your bunch of mates, and one of your mates would say something a bit fucking weird, like they'd say something a bit racist or like something horrible about women or whatever, and you'd go, "You fucking what? What did you say?" And they go, "Oh, whatever the sort of thing is." And you'd all go, "What the fuck?" Like, and you'd have a chat about it, and they'd go, "Oh, I just think because of this and that," and you'd like have a conversation. Do you know what I mean? You'd like make some jokes to sort of lighten the mood, and some people would get pissed off, but then they'd calm down. This person would say that you're not understanding him, but then you'd listen to him, and over the course of a few hours, you'd like figure it out. Do you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
that person might make you think things and challenge some of your preconceptions, and you'll definitely challenge theirs. And over the course of a conversation and over the course of a year or however long it might be, what would happen is like sort of more balanced viewpoints would come out of that situation. So not like pure viewpoints that are fully left and not pure fully viewpoints that are fully right, but more of a kind of centrist general understanding of where the boundaries are and what is and isn't acceptable, etc., etc. But that doesn't happen anymore, right?
No.
What happens now is that people go online and say the weird thing, and loads of people go, "Ooh, you're fucking racist." But then loads of other people go, "Come and join us. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. Oh, we agree. Come over here." And you go over there, and it's not like two weird guys, "Ugh, fucking hate black people." There's like hundreds of them. Do you know what I mean? All together being racist and fucking weird. But because
Yeah.
there's loads of them, it makes it feel like that's an acceptable opinion when it's obviously
Yeah, it's like
not.
an echo chamber, isn't it? And like because of the way the
Yeah,
algorithm works, the more you're in that echo chamber, the deeper into the echo chamber you go, and it's
exactly.
yeah, you can't escape.
And that's awful when it's things like racism,
Mm,
awful and dangerous when it's sexism, racism, all those things, all the isms. But it's like, well, it's not worse, it's just as bad. It's all awful. But when it's things like self-harm, suicidal ideation that's getting like algorithmically served to children, that's
yeah,
really fucked up, right? It's fucked. And it's happening at scale, completely unchecked. No one's doing anything about it. And it just sucks. It sucks so bad. So yeah, I don't really know why I'm ranting about that, but it's kind of what I'm doing at every available opportunity at the moment.
that's fair.
And radio is the antithesis of all of that. It's a lovely, safe space.
Well, there you go. Well, if people are listening, and obviously that's a very attractive prospect, and they want to get into radio, what advice would you give them? Like, what's the first steps they should take to entering the world of radio and presenting and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, good question. It's not the easiest thing to break into, honestly. There's only so many radio stations, only so many shows, and a lot of people that want to do it. You've got to be resilient. I mean, that's the case for anything in entertainment. People are going to say no a lot more than they say yes. But create a demo, be really clear about what differentiates you from other people. Be aware of the fact that people still love people with passion and skill as well. Like a lot of the presenters that are getting hired now are actual DJs who can actually DJ. Um, I kind of wish it wasn't the case, but it is. You've got to have a good social presence now, and I think,
Yeah,
and I sort of hate that, if I'm really honest. I sort of think that sucks that people are getting hired on the strength of their social numbers. I think that's a shame generally, but that's the world we live in now, and you have to have your own brand clearly identified, and you have to show that people care about that brand so that you're, an obvious choice to get a show. So you've got to have the skill, you've got to know how to communicate, you've got to be able to chat, but you also have to have those kind of solid foundations, if you like, and be hireable in that sort of commercial sense as well. So it's
yeah,
a hard time to get into radio. There's no doubt about it. It's hard for presenters who've been presenters for years, let
yeah,
alone new ones. But if you're serious about it and you're willing to take that advice and build that following and specialize, then I think it's doable.
yeah,
It's about specialisms. I think there used to be lots of people that would just wanted to be a radio presenter. Don't really care what I do. I think one of the reasons I've been successful in radio is because I've specialized, and
yeah,
everything I've done has been specialized. So, Fresh Blood is clearly specialized. It's specialism in a specialist station. It's like double
yeah,
specialized. Um, and then I do a show on magic at the musicals as well because I love musical theatre and always have. And I think if the Venn diagram between rock fans and musical fans, it would just be a fucking circle because rock is the most theatrical genre there is. So it's never a
yeah,
surprise when you meet people from the musical theatre world who love rock. Um, but yeah, the reason I'm on that station, I do weekends on there and have for years, is because I love musicals, right? And I have a specialist interest in that field, so I can talk about it passionately and authentically, you know. Um, then if your, specialism is comedy and you want to be like a breakfast show presenter or like do an entertainment show, then be that specialist. You're more likely to get hired as a radio presenter if you're a stand-up comedian now than you were before.
right.
Before it was enough to just be a radio guy, and it's not now. You have to have a specialism, I think. So being really clear about what you want to do and why you want to do it is a very good starting point, I think, if you want to get into the world of radio for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like I say, if it's such a competitive industry as well, like radio or the music industry as a whole, like entertainment industry, like you've got to have something that kind of sets you apart in a way, I think.
100%. You've got to have a story. Everyone sort of needs a story these days, an authentic story, not like a made up one, but you know. But yeah, it is a wild, wild time to be a radio presenter. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
And what advice would you give to bands that are listening who want to get played on the radio? They've not been on the radio before, they want to get their song on the radio. What should they do?
I'm always amazed by by how little people know about the music industry. Um, and I was the same when I was in bands. I had no idea how it worked. And I always say now, like if I started a band now, I think we'd be immensely successful really quickly because I know how to navigate that world. I know
Yeah.
what people do and
You've
why
seen
they
behind the
do it.
curtain now, haven't you? So
Yeah, it's not complicated, and it's
yeah.
also not big. There's very few people you need to impress to get on, you know. So you have to be good. It's not just about who you know. The quality has to be there, and that's the other thing to bear in mind about people talk about nepotism a lot in the music industry, and there is of course nepotism in the music industry. I don't think it's always as calculated as people think. I think it's more like, oh, my mate played me this tune, and he listens to the tune. If it's amazing, why would you not play it? Do you know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
going to play it because it's come through a established route. I'm not going to be like, oh no, that's nepotism. Like, if it's brilliant, nepotism is when something's shit and you play it anyway. You
Yeah.
know that's nepotism. But if it's good, fucking great. I don't care where it's come from. So so yeah, it's a really small universe, and I always interested that people don't realize that. So I think it's worth people exploring that universe and actually talking about socials. I've been struggling for years with socials because I fundamentally believe it's the Antichrist. I sort of don't want to add to the pile, but I also conscious of the fact that I've got knowledge and stuff that I should share. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of trying to figure out constantly what my social presence is. It's usually this kind of weird disconnect between I fucking hate social media and here's a thought, you know. So I haven't been able to figure it out, which is why I don't post that often. But one of the things I'm thinking about doing is posting kind of more advice for bands because I think it's interesting how few people understand it. But yeah, understand who's who and why they do what they do, so you know how to navigate it and who to impress is the key, first key. The second key when it comes to radio play is there's not that many places that are going to play your music, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of really good local shows that do local shows really well and community stations and stuff like that. But in terms of scaled brands, there's really in our world, there's really only three, and that's Planet Rock, Kerrang, and the BBC. That's pretty
Yeah.
much it in terms of scaled brands. I'm not. That's no disrespect to all the others because there's hundreds who are doing like smaller things, and they do an amazing job, and it all adds up, right? It all adds up. So
Yeah.
100% they have value. But if it was me and I wanted to get my music out there now, I'd probably start with the scaled brands and then go to the other ones. And with BBC, I mean, I know a load of people at BBC, and they always like say it's insane how many bands message them, like on DM or email or whatever, and go, "Hey man, like I want you to play my song," and it's like, okay, well at the BBC we have introducing. You have to upload your song to the BBC introducing uploader. Like all the information is readily available online.
Yeah. With a
Just
quick Google search. Yeah.
yeah, just do what we've told you to do, right?
Yeah.
Like just do that. So that's the entry into the Beeb is putting for a start, putting your music on the uploader. Just do that. Before you do anything else, do that. And then the second thing is then do engage with the presenters that you think would be interested in you and say, I've put the music in the uploader. Can you look out for it? And they'll go, okay. It's that simple. And then
Yeah.
with me, it's literally just me. So, and again, in a bid to sort of engage with people on socials more, I've been recently just directing people to my Instagram. Usually I'd say email, freshblood at kerrangradio.co.uk, which you can do, but just message me on Instagram is the easiest way. I'm there, Alex Baker Man. Just message me, send me your music, and if it's good, I'll play it. It's that my mantra has always been: if it's good, it gets on.
Right.
That's literally what the show is about. I don't care what genre it is. I don't care who you are, how many figure, like what your numbers are. Like PR people always say, "Oh, this band they've had 20,000 streams," or I couldn't give a fuck. Is it good? Yeah, all I care about is if it's good. If it's good and I think it's got legs and it's going to have a place on the show, I'll 100% play it. That's the best thing to do is just message me on Instagram. Give me time because I'm one person. Don't be afraid to send a follow-up note. Please be polite and kind, and I'll get to it eventually. And then if it's good, I'll play it. So lots of great things have happened from the bands that have played on the show. People because it's Kerrang, right? Like people can take that credibility and utilize it to get tour management or get on tours with other bands or get a manager or whatever. Like people can utilize that credibility to do, and they do. You know, I hear that story time and time again that people will say, "Got the play on Kerrang, we leverage that to get other stuff." Um, so yeah, that would be my advice straight out the gate. It's just
Yeah.
get that stamp of approval. People need champions as well in this industry. I think often what people don't realize again is the industry is very small, and if you've got someone who really believes in your band and thinks you're sick, they'll tell people about it. And before you know it, like it's literally one text for me to tell people at BBC Radio One about a band. It's just this band is sick. Have you heard him? Oh no, I haven't. Oh, this is amazing, and vice versa. Alex, have you heard this? Oh yeah, this is brilliant. I'll play it. You know, it's just like it's so. It's not like this big thing that's so impossible to navigate. It's like 20 people. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That can get you playing download, booked on major tours, get you on Kerrang. Like it's not rocket science, but you just need to know how to navigate it and be kind and be humble. You know, I
Yeah.
interviewed Split Chain the other day, and I'd never interviewed them, but I've been playing them loads, and they're such nice guys and
Great
such nice
guys.
guys.
Yeah.
They're so nice. And I said to them at the end of the interview, I was like, bloody hell, I liked your band before, but I'm fully 100% rooting for you now because you're just so nice, you know.
Yeah.
And because our world, we're not working in pop, right? Because our world in the alternative world is generally really nice and full of really nice people that are in it for the right reasons. Like, it just goes such a long way if you're just a decent human being. Do you know what
Yeah.
I
It's
mean?
easy. It's easy just to be nice. Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Like, it's not rocket science, is it? And it happened the other day. Like, I won't say who, but this band just started posting all this stuff about a fellow radio presenter saying, "Oh, she's been sleeping on our music. Oh, imagine that. Oh, what a loser." Oh, it was just like, she just texted me. It was like, "Have you seen this?" I was like, "What a bunch of dicks.
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't want to listen to you.
Not
So,
playing them now." Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Just fucked it by being a
Yeah.
dickhead.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Just don't
Anyway,
understand.
mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mad.
Just, just it doesn't like manners cost nothing. Just be a genuinely nice person. Like
Yeah.
no one's expecting you to like buy like these extravagant gifts for people.
No.
Just be polite.
Just be polite, be nice, and also be realistic. You know, like my one of my old bands broke up because we weren't good enough. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
sometimes I get music sent through, and you know, it doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen as much as I'd like. I'd like nothing more than to be able to reply to every single thing that comes through and give constructive feedback to everything. But it's just the scale of it is just not doable for one person. If I was
Yeah.
a team of 20, it might be different, but it's just me. But you know, there has been times in the past where people have really said, "Look, we're not getting anywhere. Like, can you really give us some feedback?" And I say to them, like, "I will, but do you really want it? Do you actually want feedback, or are you just saying it because you want to get played? Like, are you ready to hear it?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, like the first thing that screams out is that your vocalist cannot sing. Like,
Yeah.
like
Sorry.
you are sorry, like I'm not. I don't make the rules. Like they
Yeah.
can't sing. So if you want to be in a band when your vocalist can't sing, I'm telling you now, it's not going to work out. Like, you know, sometimes you do have to be that honest with. And I had it once where his band, they borderline hassling me. Right, they were messaging me so much, so, like, please give us feedback and blah blah blah. And they were so bad that I just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be constructive. Like they were so bad. Um, but after about a month of them like literally hassling me, I was like, I just need to get these guys off my back, right? I messaged them back and was like, I'm happy to give you feedback on the understanding that you don't like hate me for what I have to say. And they're like, no, honestly, we've just got to the point where we just need the feedback and just need to know what we're doing wrong. So I kind of went through it and I was like, it's a horrible message to send, but vocalist isn't singing in tune. Your guitars are out of tune. It kind of blows my mind that you don't realize that. You know,
Yeah.
the drummer's out of time. Like the song isn't particularly interesting. Like it's just none of it works. And they messaged me back one word, you're a cunt. Like that. Or just cunt, full stop.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. Like Doesn't mean your band's not shit.
Yeah. That doesn't change anything,
Doesn't change anything. You're still
Just means
shit.
your music bad and you're bad people. So
Yeah, and now I don't want to I just wish I hadn't bothered. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And people don't like to hear negative things. I get that, right? Like I remember when I was in a band and someone I quite respected at the time told me that I wasn't good looking enough and I was too fat to be a frontman. And it sort of shattered my confidence into like 1,000 pieces. Um, and it was absolutely awful. And I wasn't ready to hear that at all. Kind of like doubled down on all my own personal anxieties and all that sort of shit. So it was a terrible thing to go through. But the flip side of it was that I decided to make myself look a bit more presentable and I took some singing lessons. So and then what I then became was absolutely, and there's not many things that I will say that I'm good at, right, in my life. I'm not an arrogant prick. Um, but there's two things I know that I'm good at. One is I've got good ears. Right? I can spot good music, and I know who to back. The other thing is I'm a fucking brilliant metal vocalist. Genuinely, it pisses me off every day that I'm not still in a metal band.
and
I feel like I've
three,
got
a brilliant flute player.
yeah, well, I can't even play the flute anymore. I've lost that skill.
Oh
I've
no.
not stuck with it. I know, I'm mortified. What a waste of years
Yeah.
of training. My flute is basically moldy. It's basically green. It's
Yeah.
fucking disgusting. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
get a new one. Yeah.
I should do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
solo instrument though, isn't it? A flute. You can't play it by yourself. You can't just sit there playing the flute. You have to like be in an orchestra or like,
that's
you know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, other than getting yourself a new flute, what else is planned for you for 2025? Have you got anything else on the cards this year?
Yeah. Top of the list is buy a new flute, and then yeah, I mean I'm still on tour, so I'm still doing Hot Wheels until the middle of May. So that's going to take up a huge amount of time. Um, I don't know whether I'm allowed to talk about something that I may or may not be doing at a major UK festival. But suffice to say, I'll be at Download.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Um, uh, and yeah, basically outside of that, it's just fresh blood, being a dad, 3 or 4 different jobs on the go. I'm doing loads of new work with Now Rock as well, the TV channel, which is fun. We've got loads of shows planned over the year for that, which is great. Um, it's so sad to see Kerrang TV go, of course, but it's great that Now Rock's come up and sort of taken its place. So doing loads of work with those guys, and they're a really small team as well, and just want to do some good fun stuff and appeal to the rock world. So yeah, doing that, and you'll see what else comes my way. There's lots of other shows and stuff on the horizon, so we'll see.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, yeah, Alex, thank you very much for taking the time and, tell me the whole story of how you got into the radio and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's been really interesting. And I'm sure lots of people listening have learned new things about, just the radio world and what bands should and shouldn't be doing and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, thanks very much.
No worries. I know I talk a lot, but hopefully there was some useful stuff in there.
I'm sure that definitely is. It definitely is. But before I let you go, any final words? Anything you want to say or plug?
Watch Sleep Token at Download 2025.
I back
That's
that.
it. Oh
Especially the
yeah,
gatekeepers.
especially the gatekeepers. And if you are in a band, do come and follow me on Instagram. I am on TikTok as well, but I'm 41, man, and TikTok, like every time I go on there, it just makes my brain hurt, and I just don't think it's the platform for me. I can't be on there in good faith. Most of my following, if you like, is on X, but I post maybe once every month on there because it's just the most
A
depressing
hellhole.
place on earth.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful, loathsome place. So most of my time and energy now in the social space is on Instagram. So if you want to like connect with me, that's probably the best way to do it. So come find me on there. And please, if you ask for feedback, don't call me a cunt.
Please.
Please.
Yeah. Alex, thanks again. Yeah, I'll let you go and hopefully I'll see you soon. And if not, I'll see you at Download.
Yeah, defo. Thanks, Zach.
Awesome. Thanks very much. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Not a Phase. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. leave a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, follow the podcast on social media, and maybe even join the Patreon or grab some merch from the store. You can find everything that you need at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again, hopefully catch you on the next one, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.